Or we could say stuff that just won't count.
Tell me when.
Oh, hey, I'm Paul Redham. This is Justin Marler. I got to tell you, I'm so excited. I don't know, like 15, 16 years ago, we did a similar episode to this in the back of the old Homesville office, and with equipment that wasn't nearly as good. So it's wonderful to have you back.
Thanks, Paul.
And now we're doing it live instead of doing it on the little yucky phone thing. And it's episode, what is it? Episode 21, 22? 24, episode 24. And so we're going to learn a little bit about inspections. And Justin Marler is by far the best in town. And his whole team is really pretty fantastic because he trains them. We were just talking about that a little bit. And so Justin, tell us a little bit about what buyers should look for in an inspector and all that good stuff.
They should look for me in an inspector.
There you go.
Somebody who has Asperger's, who's extremely detail oriented and knows building and construction really well. Any guy who comes out of being like a cable installer or a satellite installer and all of a sudden got a home inspector license, that's kind of risky. I like guys that have a background in construction because they know how things are put together.
And your guys have a background in construction?
They do, yeah. They all do, every single one of them, yeah.
So what happens during an inspection?
During an inspection, the inspector is going to be super focused on catching defects and problems, taking notes. We have computers on site on laptop stands, and so we're just very focused in finding defects, and also we're taking lots of photographs. So we're pretty focused. We prefer being left alone while we're doing our inspection so we can catch stuff for you. And then at the end, we'd like to debrief our clients on all the findings or the major findings. During the inspection, we're crawling in the attic, we're crawling around the house. If it's a iron beam, we're crawling under the house, we're opening up electrical panels, we're pretty much dissecting that house, being like investigators.
Well, that's and nobody does it better. But there's some limitations that people should know about, like you can't move furniture and certain roofs you can't get on. And
absolutely, there's a lot of limitations. For instance, if a house is occupied, I'm not going to be testing every outlet. I can't get to them. Sometimes windows are blocked by plants or furniture or whatever. Also, we don't do certain things in Texas. We don't inspect water softeners. Home inspectors don't. And some inspection firms don't do pools and spas. We choose not to do pools and spas because they are super expensive and they require a really good set of knowledge bank that we don't have as home inspectors. We just don't have good enough training for it, to be honest.
Let's see, Marquette wrote down some other questions here, and then we'll just have a good time. On an inspector report, what do you, well, I guess this is for me, huh? So on inspection reports, what happens, so you guys know, Justin does this incredibly thorough inspection, and then like I get it, and I assume other agents do this same thing. They get it, and I take notes, and then I put guesstimations on there next to it, just wild guesses at what things will cost, and also like what I think is coming in the next 5 years, just so that I can give people an idea of what's coming. And then we also try to get ready for another round of negotiations. So that's what happens after Justin does it. But what I really want to know, Justin, is in 5 minutes, if you just had 5 minutes to assess a house, what would you look at? What would you like? How can I go in and be a better agent or a better buyer when I'm looking at a home and figuring out if it's really worth?
Sure. That's a great question. When I buy rental properties for myself and for my family, I do that 5-minute inspection pretty much.
Oh, cool.
While we're just looking at the house, and I can rule out houses pretty quickly because of my background.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for houses that show not a lot of deferred maintenance. Like if there's lots of wood rot and siding issues and water damage trim, and it just generally looks kind of untaken care of, that's a good deterrent for me because I don't want to have a house personally that has a ton of exterior or interior issues that needs to be addressed right out of the gate. I'm also going to be looking at walls, interior, over doors, windows, and so on, and looking for cracks that would be an indication of structural settlement or structural problems. And usually you can cast that off pretty fast. If there's a straight crack in a ceiling or a straight crack in a wall, it's probably not a problem. And if it's a diagonal crack, it's probably related to structural settlement. So if I see that, then automatically I'm kind of out. I don't want to have to deal with that. Then there's also electrical. If I see aluminum wiring, I usually don't want to step into a house with aluminum because the updating of aluminum can cost $8,000 right out of the gate. And I don't want to have to deal with that unless someone else pays for it. I would also look at the AC, which it might be a little harder for other people to determine the age of an AC or a water heater, but I would also look at those ages as well and make sure those systems aren't at the end of their useful life expectancy. And if they are, then I would like to immediately think in terms of negotiating for those systems.
Right.
And the last one would be the roof. You've got to get a ladder on a roof to see the condition of a roof. You can't judge the condition by just walking around outside. So It's going to take an extra 5 minutes to get the ladder out and look at the roof. Yeah.
So you need 10 minutes.
I need 10 minutes. Yeah.
10 minutes and you can thumbs up or thumbs down it. What are some of the craziest things you've ever seen in an inspection?
Oh man, I found, it is really disgusting, but I found a very large albino rat in an air return. It was completely mummified, and these people have been running their HVAC system with this mummified albino rat in their air return.
That had to stink.
Oh, I'm sure it did. And at a certain point, they're like, oh, the smell went away. Everything's fine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I remember years ago, I don't know if you were with me or not, but I remember crawling underneath the house and seeing jacks that people were using to hold their pier and beam homes
Yeah,
up.
sure. Yeah.
You see a lot of
Yeah,
that
I
kind
actually
of
saw a
stuff.
house, a pier and beam house that had steel piers, and the entire crawl space had about 8 to 10 inches of water, standing a lake under the house.
In it.
Yeah.
How's that foundation even?
So here's the crazy part: is this house had just had a foundation repair. All the foundation piers were new. The steel piers were new. So when I brought it up and I told my client, just don't buy this house. I don't say that very often because you can buy whatever you want, but this house had so many significant concerns and it wasn't that old. I told them not to buy it because they went back to the foundation repair company, the sellers did, and the sellers said that the foundation repair company stands by their work and that the house is fine. And so I'm asking myself, in what situation is it okay to have a lake under your house?
It's not.
Never.
It sounds like maybe the foundation was fine, but the grading was way off.
The grading was way off, and they didn't want to address that, which was probably the initial problem for the foundation in the beginning.
Yeah, so I guess
Too
they
much
just
moisture.
didn't lift it.
Yeah.
Give themselves enough room.
Yeah.
That's just not thinking
I don't know.
wisely. You probably see a lot of hairbrained
Oh
kind
my goodness. I had a buddy, a home inspector of mine, that found a bucket of blood in a bedroom.
How do people not see this when they before they go to contract?
Yeah. We've actually inspected a lot of hoarders' houses too. And
Those have to be hard because you can't get to everything.
that's what you'd think. But guess what?
Yeah.
If you can't see anything, you write up not accessible all over the report.
Wow.
I can't see most of the flooring. 90% of the flooring I can't see. 80% of the walls I can't see.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy town.
Yeah.
What goes in a report? I see you guys looking off camera. This is Marquette. Paul's
people-
solo today. You guys.
People know who's back there.
So, Justin, tell us a little bit. I know that you do an excellent job of providing a report that includes photos. I've even seen you do videos in some of your reports. What goes in there, and how should someone read one of those reports?
Great question. In the state of Texas, we have to use their promulgated report form, which is confusing, unfortunately. We can't do a narrative style like they do in Colorado or California. So the report is, unfortunately, complicated. It's broken out by system, foundation, grading, plumbing, electrical, all that. And we put tons of content in there, information about the systems, the type of systems, the deficiencies that we find, and then we combine those with lots of photographs. The way that we help our clients sort through all that information is we highlight things that we believe are priorities in red in the report. And then the rest of the report would be general maintenance or observations. For instance, if we're doing a house and we have, like yesterday I did a house from the 70s and it was a 45-page report. Wow. Lots of problems. 75% of the problems were actually not major. But the ones that were major were pretty significant. An addition on the back that was racking, the walls were not plumbed, and it wasn't built correctly. It was built on a patio, so it had water intrusion and settlement. So I would highlight that in red. Like you have to have concern regarding this addition and how it's going to lead to potentially water intrusion and so on. Or if there's a leaky water heater, we'll highlight that in red too. So that's how we help navigate all the information. The other part that makes it more complicated in Texas is that the state of Texas, Texas Real Estate Commission, has us inspect houses basically according to modern construction practices and code, essentially. So the benchmark is set really high, especially for a 1940s pier and beam.
Right.
There's going to be a lot on that house that doesn't meet code. And some of that stuff is minor, and some of it is electrical safety and a concern. And so We parse all that out again with red comments being the most important.
And when you meet with the client and they come at the end of the inspection to chat with you, what is like the main question they should ask you, do you think?
I wouldn't say there's a main question. It's an overall question. What is the overall structural and mechanical status of the house? Is it overall okay, or is it overall, are there major concerns? That's a good way to kind of crack open the nut. But then you also want to break out all these other details too. For instance, if AC is from 10 or 11 years ago and it's still functioning, you want to also mention that it's at the end of its useful life, and ask people to consider putting some money aside, because it's non-negotiable at this time because it's fine. But to be aware that the $6,000 cost is going to creep up on you.
It's coming.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, at the end of a conversation with a client, they always ask me, would I buy this house? And I always say no, because I have a house. But then I rephrase the question, would I let my mother buy the house? And that's a really good way of seeing what I truly think about a house. For instance, if there's some minor issues and maybe an AC that doesn't work, I would tell my mom, hey, put some money aside for the AC and try to negotiate, $2,000 worth of repairs or whatever. And it's a great house. After you fix these things, it's actually a fine house. Mm-hmm. Or, mom, this house has a foundation that needs to be replaced, and you have electrical that's unsafe that needs to be redone. You have cast iron plumbing on this house. Are you really wanting to redo a whole house? And I would say, no, mom, walk away. There's another house around there.
Cool.
Yeah.
And in terms of, I know you talked about your 10-minute assessment without doing a full, thorough investigation.
Well, you can do 5, just he has to skip the roof.
When we look at, a 45-page report makes me personally just kind of my head spin at the idea of trying to read all that and go through all that. If you had to pick 5 major things that a buyer should really try to focus on in the report, did those align with the things you're doing in your 5-minute sort of assessment, or what would they be?
Yes, they absolutely. When we're debriefing our clients, not taking off their pants, but like telling them about the house, we definitely summarize the priorities, the highlights of concerns, and then some people want to go through point by point and hear every single little thing, and we do that too if someone wants that. But there's really no way to guide somebody into looking at the top 5 things or the top 3 things, because it really varies from house to house. I inspected a house today that's fairly new, and it had melting wires, a circuit that was overheating, it had leaking carbon monoxide at the water heater. And so in the case of a newer home, I'm going to summarize the major things like electrical safety and carbon monoxide. But it really varies from house to house. So it's hard to put a simple rule of thumb on that. Cool.
And, I'm a big lover of those Central Austin pier and beam foundation homes, and pretty much in Allendale, I think, 80% of them are going to have those cracked walls.
Yeah, we get a lot of problems in the middle of town that just don't apply.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
He has to write down things that don't always matter.
But you're not saying that people shouldn't, you're right, the construction standards were different then, but I'm assuming that doesn't mean that just because it has the cracks in the wall that definitely rules it out. How do they kind of decide? Is it a cost-benefit analysis, or how do they go through that decision-making process?
Well, that's a great question. Yes, the signs like cracks of settlement, they're totally different for a slab foundation versus an older pier and beam. So a pier and beam is going to have cracks always. But boy, the way that I look at this is that I try to tell people, okay, you have overheating circuits, you have a carbon monoxide concern, and at the end of the day, it's going to cost literally $300 to have these 2 things fixed. Older houses that have more issues, I look at them as kind of a spreadsheet house is what I call it. I tell people, okay, I've told you about all these defects, and their eyes glaze over because it's just a lot of information and a lot of problems. And then I tell them, hey, if you are interested in this house still, get a spreadsheet together and get contractors and folks over here in these special trades to give you numbers. For instance, this house needed a new electrical panel, and that's going to be $1,000. And this house also had some roof issues, but didn't need a new roof, so that's another $400 to tune up the roof. And kind of spreadsheet the thing to prioritize the repairs. And once these things are repaired, the house is fine. The key question is, do the numbers make sense? Like, at the end of the day, if you're going to spend $30,000 on repairs, does that make sense with the house value, the price of the house, and whatnot?
And Paul, as the realtor there, you also get the report.
Yeah.
What do you do with the report, and how do you walk your clients through that?
Well, we take the report and we break it down into the more important things. We create inspection notes, and then I do guesstimates, and then I look at the price of the house, and I look at what needs to happen, and maybe it needs to be torn down and taken away, or maybe it's solvable. Maybe some things are more important to fix than others. So we suss that out. But what we really end up looking at is like, how much can we get off of the house for this? How much can we negotiate with this? And in some cases we can't get anything. And then what are you facing? And what are you facing in the next 5 years? Like I like to look at, that AC that's getting old. I know that's going to turn off in the next 5 years. So we jot that down. And it's important to me that our clients understand like what they're getting. And one of the great things you always do is you bring all the dirt. And you've always done a wonderful job of that, really inspecting and shooting people so straight. And so we get all of that, and then the client understands what they're getting, and we either negotiate it or we don't, or we walk away.
Yeah.
How often does the deal fall apart because of the inspection?
I'd say 10, maybe 15% of the time. Depends on the deal. Like it really depends on the deal. And it depends on the people. I mean, real estate's so cool because your buyer every time is different. Your seller every time is different. The home's different every time. So it's a completely different equation. I think our buyers in Central Austin probably stick more because they're with me and we understand it and we get it. Justin comes with this big, heavy report, but like a lot of times a house has been there for 50 years. Guess what? It's going to probably still be standing.
Yeah.
And the settlement cracks that we see with the pier and beam foundations, well, those are just normal. And most of the cracks that are straight that Justin's talking about are from tape and float. Is that right?
That's right.
That's just those things wear out and stuff.
Those are character lines.
Those are character lines. I have them. I'm noticing them on the screen right here in front of me. But it's a fun game, and it's always great to get to play with Justin. My big question is what as we've gone through this career together, I'm amazed at your team and what you've built and how consistently. I was really nervous using not you.
You actually told me that multiple times straight up.
Yeah,
I'm not using anybody else. Don't bother.
Yeah, and I want you to raise your prices because I like my guys to get you, but. How do you keep that consistency? Because like all of your guys, I call them little ninjas. You're the big ninja. Yeah. And then these guys they're just animals. And when I end up with an inspector from somewhere else, it's just not you. And these guys don't necessarily know what they're doing. How do you maintain that consistency?
I'm really, really cautious on who I bring onto my team, and I am really detailed in training. Like all these guys that I've trained more people than I've actually brought on my team, and I've train these folks and they're still not up to speed and I don't bring them on my team. So I wait and wait for the right guy that comes across my plate that actually knows how to inspect a house or can learn how to inspect a house and do it really, really well. I don't want my clients, my people to have a bad inspection with a guy on my team. I want each guy on my team to be a replicator of me, I'm going to be a clone of me. So when they go out there, they're viewing the house through my lens, through my eyes.
You've done an amazing job of that because now I trust them all.
Yeah.
I still prefer you because it's the original,
Thank you.
And I know
that. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We've been doing this for a really long time.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. Like when I date it back to when we bought the Homesville office and you and I were back there in the back doing this thing on that little crappy.
Yeah.
What was that thing? A flip.
They had a name for it. That deal that was.
Yeah. Huh?
Psychic.
No, it was a snap something and it was way ahead of I had to download it to the internet and it was hard to do.
And then the next thing you know, they're gone. But I never told you this story, I don't think.
What?
When you first got that office, I had just gotten my license and I went over and sent you a packet of materials trying to sell myself to you. I never heard from you.
Really?
For a year. Didn't hear from you. Nothing. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry for that. We could have had an extra year there. I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all.
How did y'all meet up?
I don't know.
I was working for another company here in town, and I met Paul through that company. Essentially, I guess you.
Oh, you were being an inspector for somebody
else.
Yeah. Oh, Doyle.
Doyle.
Was it Doyle
Yeah,
Williamson?
Text good.
Yeah. No, I used Doyle, and then you came along, and that was that. Sorry, Doyle. I know you're out there, man, and I've gotten your emails and stuff. I've been meaning to say hi, but you did a good job training him.
Awesome.
Anyway, thank you for being here today, Justin.
You bet.
It's always an honor to be on the field.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So this got a little more personal than you guys probably expected.
If you've got any questions or have any questions for Justin or for Paul, you can always drop your comments below or send Paul a direct message. And Paul, before we wrap, I've got one more question for you.
All right, for me.
Yeah. So how often have you basically looked at the inspection report and not even sent the notes to your client and been like, you got
I pick up the phone.
like this, I can't let you buy this house.
Yeah, that happens. But I usually finish the inspection notes, and what I find, at least in recent years, what I find is as I do my inspection notes, I get madder and madder and madder and madder as I go through them when they're long, and then I calm down. Probably a lot like a normal buyer does. You know?
Sure. Yeah.
I go through it, and I remember not long ago, Justin was doing an inspection for somebody. I think I told you this, and he took a picture of a dent in the garage. And of course, it was a close-up, but when I looked at it, it looked like this big dent in the garage. And then when I went to see the house, it was a little tiny dent, and I'd gotten all blown out of proportion about it. But no, I mean it happens. It just depends on the house and the clients and what people are up to and what they're really after. I'd say that's probably 5% of the time, but most homes are pretty salvageable, especially if the seller's willing to cooperate.
There have been a couple times in our history where I'm doing my inspection, you show up, and it has really bad stucco. And you're like, let's just pull the plug, let's pull the plug.
Yeah.
Can we charge half the fee for the inspection and get out of this thing?
Yeah. Stucco's, you got to be real careful.
That just smells hot button stucco.
Me too.
For a good reason.
Very,
Yeah.
very risky. Yeah.
Yeah. People don't know. Like, it's just not built right. It
Yeah.
costs a lot to fix it and fix it right.
Yeah.
It's just not good siding.
I was at an EFAS stucco house the other day, and I walked up to it and I pushed on the wall, and this 2-story house did like a ripple effect up the wall. And I was like, I told my clients, just don't buy this. This is not a good house to buy at all.
Yeah.
When you have loose stucco like that, you have water damage behind there, mold possibly,
Bad scene.
complete mess. Yeah.
Yeah, just bulldoze it.
Yeah, tear it down. And this was a 2008 house.
Was it really?
Yeah. South Austin.
Wow.
Those cool, square deal houses,
Wow. Well, that makes sense because that's
Design
right about the time we slowed down. So it was a real hot market before that.
Yeah, that's right.
Like I've noticed, I don't know about you, but I've noticed that when we have real boom times, the quality, of course, of the construction goes down.
Yeah.
And so I often look at year built and I think about what the economy was doing then with the newer stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you so much, Justin. Appreciate you being here. And we're the dream team for your Central Austin home buying stuff or anywhere. We'll shoot you straight, and we'd love to help you any way we can. I guess that's it, honey.
Stand by. Hail. And you're.
Now can I pick my nose?
Yeah.
Now you, well, yeah.